Hey folks, welcome back to the third installment of the mountain scenery diorama kit over here at Willoughby Junction. In this brief video today, I've broke out the Mold-A-Scene plaster by Woodland Scenics. It's the first time I've used this, and basically what I did over here is try to fill in some of the larger gaps and holes and seams. Since I've never worked with this product before, I didn't know what I was getting into, and the ratio here is 1 cup of plaster to about 3 ounces of water. Since I didn't think I was going to use that much, I only used a half a cup and about 1.5 ounces of water and tried to knead it as the directions indicated. As you can see, it's a kind of a more of a tan in color, and it's a little bit more gritty than the hydrocal. It's not as smooth, and I wasn't expecting that. The nice thing is, though, is there is some working time with it before it hardens up, and I was able to fill in quite a few little small gaps here, and as you can see, as I kind of come in closer, I was able to fill in my little lake area a little bit more, and where I'm going to attach some of my rock faces, I was able to make it kind of a more of a flat surface there for it to fill in. The only thing about this, though, is it takes about 24 hours to cure, and so I'm not going to be able to work on this until I let it set. And today, unfortunately, it's raining outside, so the humidity in the air is going to take a little longer. But if I zoom in even closer, you can see I still got quite a few little holes around here where the hydrocal didn't really set in. So I think I'm going to go back actually and mix up another batch of hydrocal and smooth over some of these areas, and I might even go over this Mold-A-Scene plaster one more time, and just so I can get everything white before I go ahead and paint. But that's where we are. In the prior step, I used Woodland Scenics Sculpt-A-Mold. That's this little tan colored area here to build up some of those deep depressions and rock facings that had some nice indentations and where the seams were. But I went ahead and bought myself another carton of lightweight hydrocal plaster and a new rock mold, and as you can see here, I poured myself 6 smaller rock facings that I'm just letting cure now. It's going to be about 12 hours before I pull them out of this mold here, and so we're going to get some nicer ones that I'm going to go ahead and attach to this mountain instead of the larger 3 ones that came with the original kit. And with the leftover plaster that I used in making those smaller rocks now, I went back one more time and I filled in some of the larger pinholes in the gauze here and went over the seams one more time. I built up my pond just a little bit more and smoothed out some rough edges. And when this is dry now, I'm going to come back and use some fine grit sandpaper and just smooth out some of the rough edges, some of the little clusters of plaster that might look a little unnatural here. And then hopefully our next step will then to start applying the rock facings. So that's going to be the next exciting part, attaching the rock facings, and then we're going to start painting. Okay, we're just about ready to paint, but before we get to that painting step, we have one last step that we want to go ahead and do here. Now that I have my rock castings attached to my mountain diorama with some additional plaster and hydrocal, I want to go ahead and clean up some of the rough edges, some of the depressions, or where my fingers might have overworked some of the plaster and it dried and it looks a little obvious to me. So what I did is I grabbed some 120 grit sandpaper, and using very light strokes, you don't want to use a lot of pressure just in case you start knocking things loose. You want to go over some of the seams here or some of the castings one last time and kind of blend it into the mountain itself. And then lastly, I've taken a small basting brush or a 1-inch paint brush with some soft bristles, and after I've sanded, I've kind of brushed down in one direction here, down the mountain, to get rid of any loose debris. And the one cool thing about getting some of this loose debris here is I've piled it up in here, and you can see some of the plaster that's come off. And one thing that I've done is I've collected some of the pieces here in this little cup. And what's great about this is I can actually stain and paint this and actually use these random pieces of hydrocal as talus. And I can go ahead and when I'm ready to for some additional effects, sprinkle that down as if the mountain was slowly eroding over time. So don't worry if it's too messy here. This doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, a couple of things we're going to do next is paint. And that paint is going to cover up a lot of this to begin with. And number two, when we add our actual landscaping, whether that be a ground foam or a clump foam, some trees and some brushes, that's even hide more. So again, we don't have to be specifically too perfect here. The main key is to try to smooth the edges into the mountain from the hydrocal as best as you can. Again, don't overdo it, don't use too much pressure, and also when you're using the sandpaper, try to go in one direction. You don't want to go back and forth to loosen things up. In this case here, I'm just going to go do small strokes in one direction, and given a couple minutes, you'll be surprised how much that actually smooths things out. And again, one last time, I'm going to brush everything down. Gonna get rid of some of that plaster dust, and look at right there. I'm kicking down some additional talus that I can use now for some additional effects. So in our next step here, we're going to actually start painting the rocks.